All right, so today we're going to talk a little bit about Codium's new release, which is the Windsurf editor. It's built to keep you in the flow state. It's got this agentic IDE, and the whole point of it is that you're able to issue it tasks to do in your code base, and it's able to go off and kind of go on its own and make changes based on sort of how you've set. The part I most disagree with their landing page is the flow state part, and we'll talk about it, but I really don't feel like it actually lands me in the flow state, at least. We're going to do basically my initial impressions of Windsurf, how it works, what I like about it, what I don't like about it. Now, I spent a little bit of time using Windsurf. So what I ended up using it for was building a monorepo template project. It had to use a little bit of Vite. It had to use a little bit of React. It had to use a little bit of Node. It had to create a runtime library. So there were some kind of complexities there. So what I'm going to do today is we're just kind of going to go through me just coding something with it. And I'm just going to talk about what I saw when I ran through it. Let's actually create a Next.js application that is using Turbo to make it a monorepo application with PNPM. And let's set this up to have a library set aside for us to create components using Tailwind. So I'm just going to go ahead and send that, and we can kind of see how it works. So effectively, it's great. It understands like what creating a monorepo is. It's using PNPM and Turbo. So it says, cool, here's a thing you can run. It gives you kind of terminal commands that will actually run in your terminal. So if I hit accept here, it's actually going to go off and run that inside of my terminal. There was an interruption, it looks like, had an issue there. So it's like, oh, hey, maybe we need to make a new directory for this. Okay, sure, let's do it. And now it's going to try and initiate the project using PNPM. Cool. It's running that, and it'll actually tell you like where it's running it too, which is kind of nice. So now it wrote this, created this new file. You have to accept kind of each change that's made. And some of these changes will like wait for you to respond. It does feel pretty nice. So now it's like, okay, cool. We're going to create a new app using TypeScript and Tailwind, using Next. Cool. Got it. So it's going to go off and try and do that. And I do really like this. I like how they kind of show these different tasks that are happening. There's some terminal tasks that are happening where it's going and running a command, but then it's also diffing some of the files to create new files there. It's also going off and kind of telling you when it creates something, giving me just like a diff of that creation. Like I like how a lot of these things are specified here and how they're done. It feels very nice. So now it's going in, it's going to try and create a source folder here, and it's going to create a button component for us. And, like we saw kind of earlier, it tried to run an initial command and it actually failed it. And so it kind of took that and rolled with it. It was able to kind of continue moving forward, trying new things, trying to figure out, okay, how do I kind of fix this? The one thing I don't love is I think I have to open up every diff, and there really isn't a good indicator of like which diffs I've approved or not. And so I kind of have to visit each one of these and kind of accept the changes on each of these different files, which I just find kind of tedious here. Okay, we're going to try PNPM install. Cool, looks like it did install. So it's got something set up here. So I'll actually just bring up my terminal of choice and let's go into this file. We're going to try running dev here. So missing package manager field in JSON file. We can actually just kind of like send it to that. And then it's going to try and like help me with this error. So it's like, hey, it kind of knew it created that package JSON file anyway. So it's like, hey, I know how to fix that. Let's just include the package manager in here, which PNPM actually needs. So I'm gonna accept that change. And now we can try running it again. Running this in my work terminal. All right, found a pipeline field instead of tasks. So this is an example of a problem that you'll just generally get with AI where, hey, we're using an outdated API. So this changed, that's a basic change. I can probably just do that. Change that to tasks. Try that again. All right, cool. So now this looks like it is trying to build. It had another error. So looks like it's TypeScript configuration. It's going to try that. Okay. So, it's going to try and go back and fix it. One thing that I think about Windsurf is that it's really one of the best terminal interfaces I've ever used. Like there's a lot of different terminals that have interfaces for AI. Like for example, I even have Warp, right? And I can say remove all of the nested node modules, right? And it's like, hey, I've got this command I can use to do that. Do you want to run that command, right? And that's pretty nice, but there's nothing quite like having your full application available in context for it to be able to really kind of just run all by itself. That part is like really cool. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's the best IDE that is able to do terminal commands that I've ever used. So I guess that just works. If you're looking for a replacement for your terminal, Windsurf might be a good solution for you in a way. I'm going to try running this again. Cool. We've got another issue here that's about SWC core. And again, I'm just going to kind of do this loop, right? I didn't write any of this code. So because I'm not in charge of the direction, you're kind of at the mercy of the AI to kind of figure it out and try and run it. I have run this with multiple project files open. So I've had this where like I have a folder here and I've got a second folder open that also has a different project in it. And I've done that. And it surprisingly worked fairly well when I was in those sort of situations. It was able to kind of manage that in a decent way. I do find that I had to prompt it though very specifically as to like, hey, I want to make this change to this repo. That was one thing I had to do. I had to really coax it that way. The other thing is, I will say the autocomplete isn't the best. I've used Cursor a lot for these sorts of things. You know, I'm making a change to a file and I can kind of just tab my way through like all of the changes effectively. And that's felt awesome. It's been really great to be able to do that sort of thing. I find that in Windsurf, it's less likely that it's thought ahead about all the different changes that need to be made. For instance, if I start changing this and I say Fred styles, right? There's no tab indicator that I'm like, I changed this, that it should bring me down here, right? If I go down here, I'm changing, hanging out. Eventually it'll kind of pick up, hey, there's probably a change you want to make. And that way that change comes up again is very Copilot. It's not Cursor. And I really like the way Cursor's interface feels. So there's some just weird things like that that kind of keep creeping in that just make me feel a little like, okay, I kind of missed the way Cursor did this or did that. Okay, it looks like this is actually trying to build now. The only problem is, where is this running? What port does this run on? In terms of bad workflows, one thing that I really don't like is, say I wanted to go back and change the last prompt that I made way up here, wherever I made this last prompt. I can't actually like ask another question from here because there's code changes below here. Instead, they give you this like little revert to this step button, which is fine. It's just the problem with it is that I'm not really used to that flow where like I've generated a bunch of code based on a conversation we've been having. And I'm like, oh, forget the context after here. Actually go back and I want to use that context again to change something later. Really, this doesn't give you that capability. So the only option you really have is to like go start a new conversation basically, which just doesn't feel great. Okay, so it has built the UI package. However, it decided not to actually build a next app. That makes sense why I wasn't seeing a port that we could run on. That makes sense. I think like the specific tasks seem to work great. Like right now, I just kind of was like, hey, like what port does this thing run on? And it's like, oh, well, UI package, you know, there's no app. So you should probably like make this other app. And I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense. But I will say at the very beginning of this conversation, I had asked it to create a Next.js application. And the fact that it didn't along the way and didn't really inform me of that was kind of weird. So yeah, there's some weirdness there. And I find generally if I want code generated, I wouldn't do it here because the way that Cascade runs is it's so closely aligned with your code that it isn't being very creative whenever it does code changes. Like those code changes are very much in context of the other code you've written and isn't that focused on creating the code in a creative way that may push the boundaries of like what works or how things work. Instead, things are very basic and consistent, which I guess is fine. You have to kind of know that going in that, oh, okay, I'm not going to get what I might want out of this. I'm just going to get code that's generated that's similar to the other code that I have. So whenever I want creative code, what I have to do is I go to Claude, I generate the code, and then I drop it in. And that seems to work pretty well for generating creative stuff. But even though we're still using Claude, I think it's just all the context it gives you is just not that great. So definitely not a replacement for all of my AI code generation usage that I do here. It seems like it can run pretty quickly in general. Like you've been kind of watching it here, like run through a lot of the code changes that we've been making. That part does run fairly well. Oh, and we're running on localhost. Nice. Let's actually see if that's running. All right, this is our next app that has a button on it. I mean, it does seem to work. And you can cancel this step and it'll cancel that terminal command. And if I refresh the page, does it actually cancel the server? It does not. So now there's a terminal process running. Where is that process running? That I didn't know about. Interesting. If I run another dev terminal here, it's like, yeah, that port's in use. Oh, cool. So this thing just started a terminal that now I can't close. Great. Awesome. The little things like this, right? Like okay. Well, it would have been the best terminal application. It's really not. Okay, cool. Let's actually update the next app to have a much more interesting landing page that talks a little bit about Windsurf. Cool. So we'll send that through. We'll see what it generates. One thing that I've noticed is like you've been seeing it run pretty quickly, like I was just saying. I will say that like it seems to run well when it's small files. Like this file it just created was like 24 lines, right? Pretty quick. Now we're editing the page TSX. Even though it's only 10 lines, we're kind of sitting here for a minute, and that's, I think, because it's generating a lot more code. So I think eventually when these files get pretty big, this starts to get slow because it starts to have to analyze like what code you've created and then kind of think through the code that's been generated to be able to determine like, okay, well, like what is it going to change, right? Eventually this starts to slow down, and it's because like you get these files that are like bigger and bigger and bigger over time. And you should probably be like making smaller files, but I will say like, it just like starts to slow down. And that's where like, for me, the bad ergonomics start here, where like suddenly I'm working through stuff and it's good. But even just here, like we were just generating like, I don't know, 5 files. It starts to get kind of boring. Like I'm just kind of like sitting here waiting for the code to be generated. And like, this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about like the flow state, right? Flow state means that I am focused on delivering something and I'm kind of constantly like building on it and working through it. Like that's what flow state means to me. But like Windsurf makes me bored regularly because I'm just sitting here waiting for something to finish, and it may not even finish it the way I wanted it to. So like it constantly breaks me out of flow state. Like it's cool when it works, but like when it doesn't work, it really like breaks me out. That as branding, I didn't even see this until like I started making this video, but the fact that that is the thing that they're aiming for, I feel like they really missed the mark, and Cursor is way more on that than Windsurf even is. And also the name Windsurf, like I can't for the life of me remember this. It's impossible to remember. I keep thinking flow, wave surf. It just, I don't know. It's just, I don't love the naming, I will say. So we got our file. It generated. We got our code here. I'm going to say, can you update this to have a dark theme? I keep going blind. Cool. I will say, like, sometimes it asks me for permission to run code, but like, as you've been seeing, like it just generates code constantly. And a big part of what I ended up doing when I was building my monorepo was I just basically asked it to delete a bunch of the files that it had made because the files that it had made really weren't helpful. So it really likes to create code. It kind of can just go crazy generating a bunch of stuff. I think that's just the downside of like AIs being able to write files. I don't know if this is like a huge problem, but I think it's just like, it's part of what you get with this packaging. The other thing is I can't really work while this is going. So like if I start changing stuff here, right? And I'm editing something and I'm tweaking stuff, what you'll start to see at times, and it only depends on what files you're editing, but what starts to happen here is you'll see some of these get blocked. Like it tried to make the code happen, but it won't create the diff because it doesn't know the current version of that file. And it just so happens that like it may start editing the same file as you, and it won't wait for you to finish. It kind of just like generates what it can, and then it says like, okay, cool, like resume me when you're done in a way. And I just find it like, this is really frustrating in a way. Like that's just something I've kind of like been seeing a bit here as I've been working with it. All right, interesting. So that's the, I mean, you know, and this is code. I think like if I ask Claude to generate something, it's going to be a bit more interesting, I will say. Let's refresh this landing page. Let's make it a little bit more creative. Let's make the text really kind of feel better. Everything's kind of crowded over to the left side. Could you fix that somehow and make it feel a little bit better? Additionally, like say I start adding some contexts here. I mean, the file search is fine. It's workable. I can search for a file. So if I wanted to edit card or something like that, could be cooler. Card could be cooler. Make it cool. But I can't access a bunch of things in here. However, when I go over to cursor, like they have a very much more full-fledged application here. So if I go over to the chat and I go to the context, like it's got files, folders, code, it's got web search, it's got docs, it's got like, look at the different errors that I've got. It's got Git, there's a code base, there's a notepad, like there's all these different like places I can get context from. It feels very fully fleshed and like available. And the fact that I can do a web search also is very cool. The one thing I have used a lot is the Git, where you can do it like based on this diff that I've done, I want to make this other change. And I've really enjoyed how that works. That feels very good to me. That's immediately something I miss when I start using Windsurf. I'm just like, dang, I missed that. So there's the 3 files that need to be reviewed. This UI is fine. It's easy to miss though. Like I find that like sometimes I just forget that this is here. And it's over in this tab. It's in the side tab here too. So like, I feel like maybe you shouldn't even be able to like close the Cascade if it's not done. And like these pop-ups are interesting. I haven't really coded in this. I've mostly just used the right thing here. The other thing I've noticed, the hotkeys are different than cursor. Like I hit Command K, which I think in cursor would bring up something. So if I if I do this and I do Command K, this is like my inline editor thing. And that just really doesn't exist inside of here. Like I wanted to do a command on this. Okay, I can do command there. What is the command for that? It's I. Instruction rather than command. Okay. I mean, I guess it's just, anyway. And I'm sure these can be configured. Is this the updated state? Is this the creative? Is this the much more creative version that it did? No way. There's no way. Hold on. Wow. Very underwhelming. So I'm just going to ask Claude directly to do this for me. I do feel like this is very doable for an AI these days to be able to create some nice looking code. And I find it odd that these kind of tools aren't able to do it in a very good way. So we'll give it another try. Okay. I mean, like, look at this. It looks so good. It's so much better, man. The Claude artifacts, man, it's just great. You give it some code, it outputs some beautiful stuff. And now, admittedly, I would not want to make these changes in cursor. I'm just going to, give this to Windsurf and say, hey, use this instead. And it's going to try and figure out how to do this. All right. And now there's immediately some issues. Even when given the right code, it's still not going there. And, it might be that there's some things that aren't set up right. Actually, you know what it probably is? Now that I'm actually analyzing the code and thinking for myself, I bet I might know what it might be. This thing doesn't have Tailwind set up correctly. Could it be? Review the Tailwind config. So here it's analyzing some files, and based on that analysis, it's going to generate some files. It needs to add the Tailwind package to the UI library. Oh, yes, the UI package. That's the problem. Okay. It's going to add post CSS and auto prefixer. Yep, those are required. Definitely required. It's adding this to the UI, which is interesting. It's creating this at the UI layer again. And now we're going to get errors. Because it's like, hey, by the way, this thing didn't build. Okay, well, interesting. Oh man, is Lucid installed? It's not a peer dependency of the package. It's now a dependency and a peer dependency. That's maybe not right, but okay. All right, so you made a bunch of changes. It's just you didn't run pm install. Let's see what modern technology can do for us. What's going on? Oh, we didn't load the favicon. That's it. No, it's not that. What happened? What happened? Why aren't you running? What's going on? This was supposed to be basic and simple. Would you like to make any other adjustments to the package configuration? This is the thing. I'm also like, this is an intentionally bad example because I'm just kind of giving it free rein. I'm just like, go figure it out. You can do it. I believe in you. And yeah, this shows you why you need a programmer. I think something is still not working. I'm going to give it a hint. Do we by chance need post CSS in our main config? Yes. We do need to set up post CSS in the web app as well. Interesting. It is actually kind of a random file that you need. I've run into this before, so fair. But like, come on, you know what I mean? Like, there are some things I do feel like the AI is kind of short circuiting some stuff. It's like, I mean, things look fine. Like, it should build. Like, don't worry about it. You know what I mean? Like, does it work? Oh, I should probably rerun it. Okay, let's start it over. We'll just see. All right, it's running. It's still looking pretty bad. Hold on. Okay, if I open up the UI, it's got my configuration here for my content. And if I look at this guy, it's got the content. At this point, I'm just going to say, let's generate another app. So it's going to create a new directory next to the monorepo for comparison. So it's like, it's like, I want to run this one. But then every time it gets these like command line arguments that it has to pass, it really just, it doesn't know how to like set this up, which is funny. Okay. Well, in any case, that's where we are today. We have this beautiful page that doesn't render very well, which is just fantastic. But we know what it could look like if we just use Claude artifacts. So at least we got that going for us. So all in all, despite from everything that I've said here, I do actually really like using Windsurf. I like using it on new projects when I kind of know where I'm going and I can kind of guide it along the way. It actually works quite well for that. I don't think that it gives you flow state, admittedly, though. I think that that part isn't really set up in a way that works very well. That flow state is used everywhere too. Like, it's just, you know, experience a true flow state. And I'm like, oh man, no, absolutely not. This is not what I get. So I just feel like I disagree with their advertising. Cool. If you like this post, if you like watching and you like anything about AI, we post on Untitled Discussion and we post here as well. We'd really appreciate it if you like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much. All right, so just one quick little update here. I did finally figure out what was happening with this. The entire package just needed to be built. Something about its ability to understand how Turbo works and its ability to know, like, hey, maybe you should try running a build because Turbo caches stuff really aggressively. Maybe that's something that should have done. Here it is. It's actually kind of pretty. But again, understanding build systems, understanding how these things go together, not necessarily its forte. Being able to build simple code, sure. But yeah, it kind of shows like the early days of these AIs that can build anything. Sure, they can build anything, but will it work?